Have you ever questioned the true extent of human consciousness? Are there unexplainable skills lying dormant, waiting for us to awaken them? Could we train our consciousness, just as we do our physical body, to reach a level that would allow us to leave it at will? And could we use these skills to remotely travel to distant parts of our planet and solar system? Humanity has long been fascinated by these possibilities and the part that could play in our understanding of the universe. One question that haunts us all is, are we really alone in our solar system? Well, according to one remote viewer, this level of consciousness is achievable, and he used to prove it. We are not alone in the universe. Join us on this exploration of the dark side of the moon, where we explore the depths of human consciousness and its abilities. We dive into theories concerning the idea that an advanced race of extraterrestrials is building a secret base right in our own solar system, and how this all relates back to a top-secret government program. This is the story of Ingo Swann and the Stargate Project. The Stargate Project Remote Viewing. Our story begins with the Stargate Project. A secret U.S. Army unit was formed back in the late 70s. Established by the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Stanford Research Institute, their main goal was to investigate whether or not psychic phenomenon could be used in military and intelligence projects. The undisclosed operation was centered on the psychic abilities of remote viewing, a skill that allowed clairvoyants to withdraw their consciousness from their bodies for a period of time. This would allow them to travel to places, events, and information anywhere in the world from the comfort of their current position. If possible, this would enable the military and intelligence agencies to spy on current events around the world. You may assume the Stargate program was funded to see if there was a way to spy on countries such as China and Russia using clairvoyance. But this is where the story begins to get interesting. One former psychic who worked in the Stargate Project offers the following came forth and leaked some very valuable information a few decades ago. He explained that the major driving force behind a later operation was the search for extraterrestrial life in our solar system. This brings us to the fascinating story of a man known as Ingo Swann. He supplied ample evidence to suggest that an unidentified humanoid civilization had built a base on the dark side of the moon. Ingo Swann and aliens on the moon. Back in 1998, Swann released a book titled Penetration. It was based on his time working with the secret agency that followed in the footsteps of the Stargate program. Swann was known as a powerful psychic who set a new standard for remote viewing. He claims his test went beyond the conventional mold of casual experimentation and candidate burnout, in the process bringing about a valuable set of protocols that would take the art to a whole new level. While skeptics existed during the initial release of his book, in 2006, the CIA started releasing documents and confirmed Swann had participated in the project. If you like what we do, subscribe to the channel. In his early years, Swann was well aware of his psychic abilities. As he grew older, he wanted to experiment with the possibility of extrasensory perception, ESP, and eventually put his name forward on several studies, hoping that this would boost his physical abilities. Swann confirms he began working with the Stanford Research Institution in 1973. He was chosen as a prime candidate for their remote viewing project after his success in several early experiments working with the American Society of Psychic Research. The SRI had been using people such as Swann to remotely view places around the world for at least a decade. But once they found Ingo Swann, they decided to push the project to the next level. They wanted to see if he could explore the solar system. Initially, he was taken back when the intelligence agency asked him to focus on Jupiter instead of sites around the world. While he initially declined the proposal, later he came around and made some interesting observations that would later be confirmed. During the experiment, he spoke of a ring that ran around the planet Jupiter like Saturn. While the idea was initially dismissed, he would be proven right 6 years later when Voyager 1 saw the ring as it passed by the planet in 1979. Swann's observations were so accurate that he was soon being noticed by all sorts of intelligence agencies. Eventually, he received an unusual phone call in 1975 that was followed up by a meeting with the government officials he referred to as the Twins. These shadowy figures requested his help on a project suited to his talents and asked him if he was interested. After a few moments, Swann nodded to agree, and immediately a bag was placed over his head, and the three made their way to a secret site by helicopter. When they arrived at the destination, Swann was greeted by a man known as Axelrod. He claimed to be part of a group that wanted a man of Swann's capabilities to participate in a remote viewing project, and if he said yes, a steep end of $1,000 per day would be issued. Remote viewing of the moon. As he needed the money, Swann decided that he would go ahead with the project. It came with various contractual obligations, such as he could not leave the off-the-record facility until he was no longer needed. Axelrod came to see his new participant the following morning and informed him that he would not be observing the Earth. Instead, he wanted him to observe something in the solar system. Just like SRI had requested a few years prior, Axelrod went on to explain he wanted a detailed remote viewing of the moon. The usual request initially surprised Swann, as he imagined we knew all there was to know about the moon, considering humans had touched its surface in the previous decade. But another condition of the project forbade Swann from asking any questions. He was to simply use the coordinates supplied to him and report back on what he observed. As he began the viewing process, Swann made his way to the moon. In some places, he saw nothing. In others, he saw cliffs, dunes, and craters full of white dust. Then something strange began to happen. Swann reports that he could see various tracks that seemed to have left behind by some kind of vehicle. He also noticed patterns on the soft dust that lay on the moon, as if it was a great gust of wind occurred regularly. But how could this be possible if there's no atmosphere on the moon? He continued with the remote viewing project and soon encountered an unusual light in the distance. As he approached the source, what he saw startled and shocked him. Swann claims the light was coming from an airfield full of structures, including hangars, towers, and small buildings, all connected by an intricate system of roads and bridges. Heavy machinery was also cutting perfectly round holes in the surface of the moon. Intrigued, he began moving closer to the structures and noticed that many of the buildings were domes with windows. Instead, he could see an eerie green glow that looked a lot like a luminescent light. When he finally got close enough to the windows to peek in, what he laid his eyes on would forever stick with him, for inside, he saw humanoid creatures who looked exactly like us. Suddenly, 2 or 3 of the humanoid figures stopped what they were doing and looked directly at the window where Swann was peeking through. Immediately, he became nervous and called to Axelrod, "They're pointing at me," to which he replied sternly, "It's time to come back now, Swann." As he regained consciousness in the facility, Swann looked to his boss and said, "You already knew there were psychic beings." To which he replied, "The project is over for you. It's time to go home." While it seemed like Swann's time working with the secret agency was over, this wouldn't last long. If you find this topic interesting, we recommend our video on the Terra Papers, the alternative history of Earth and humanity. Created by Robert Sky, they explore ancient history related to the Star Elder. The documents offer an alternative history of Earth and humanity, a cosmic scale narrative through which is implied that our planet and its inhabitants are intimately connected to extraterrestrial beings and ancient galactic civilizations. The next meeting. 6 months after meeting with Axelrod, Swann again came into contact with the twins, who organized a phone call with Axelrod. He instructed him to get his remote viewing to around 65% success rate, and then he would be in touch. Swann heard nothing for nearly a year, but when he approached the 65%, just as Axelrod had instructed, he left a note on his desk. The next morning, the note was gone, and in its place, 2 words were written in fine white dust: "Expect contact." Swann was confused as his office was locked and he had the only key, but nonetheless, he trusted Axelrod and waited patiently for the next move. A few days later, Swann had been heading towards a cafeteria when Axelrod approached out of nowhere and asked if he could leave for 4 days. Swann's agreed, and the men all went together in the mist of the night on a journey deep into the wilderness. After some time hiking in the darkness, the men approached what seemed to be a lake. They sat silently for some time before Axelrod looked at Swann's direction with a slight grin. He pointed to the lake, and what Swann saw next sent shivers down his spine. From the depths of the water arose a triangle-shaped craft. Beams of light shot out in every direction as the craft lifted into the sky. The men fell back and rushed towards the car, away from the energy beams. As they drove back, Swann sat in a pure silence as he tried to comprehend what he just saw. By the morning, he had come up with a theory. The craft was a drone on a resupply mission. The mining on the moon required an extensive amount of water, and the humanoids would come to Earth every so often to acquire it. As Swann said this, Axelrod neither agreed nor disagreed. He simply smiled and shook his head. But this would be the last time Swann ever saw Axelrod and the twins. Swann had a new outlook on life after the startling experience that occurred that night. He would keep his promise to Axelrod and refrain from speaking about the remote viewing project and the craft he witnessed for over 10 years. Eventually, he would publish everything that happened in the book we mentioned previously, and to this day, it has remained one of the most unusual experiences ever penned on paper. What do you guys think about the story of Ingo Swann? Is there a chance that the abilities such as those claimed by him are real? Did he really allow his consciousness to travel to the moon and witness an advanced humanoid species mining into the moon? And did he really see an aircraft rise out of the lake that night? Let us know all your opinions in the comments section below. Thanks for watching.